As a literary agent, my name is Dennis Schleicher, and I'm an associate literary agent with Talcott Notch Literary LLC in Milford, Connecticut. After spending the day in the office today, I was driving home and pondering the questions that people never ask me. They're so excited to get an agent that when they get one, they don't ask the right questions. So that's what's prompted me to start this playlist. There's about a dozen or so videos in this playlist. So if you haven't listened to them, I suggest listening to all of them. They have to do with marketing from an agent's point of view, as well as how to get published and what questions to ask. I also have my boss, Gina Panettiere, in quite a few videos. We discuss how easy it is to get on the New York Times bestsellers list, or any list for that matter. So, it is so hard to get an agent. So how do you prepare for a call with an agent once you have one? Have you ever wondered the essential questions to ask before an agent calls you? In this video, learn literary agents what I want to reveal about what you should ask if you are interviewing an agent. Because that's exactly what it is. It's just like going on a job interview. It's just like, yeah, I'm a little bit dressed up today because I spent the day in the office. And it was, I'm learning a lot by being an agent in the office. And I have to say, I almost feel like an intern, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to experience that. So these questions may also be applicable if you are applying for a job or if somebody approaches you about hiring you. So questions to ask a literary agent. Have you trolled the web looking for literary agents and you get rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection letter, and finally you get the email saying the agent would like to meet with you and you have a call? Then what? I personally have had clients ask me, why are you choosing me? It's so hard to get an agent. Why do you want to represent my book? And a lot of it has to do with intuition and gut, and also just years of experience of being in the publishing business. But in the beginning, it was easy for me to take on clients. Now I have to be really selective. We have an executive assistant who combs through. We're getting ready for next month. We're going to have 3 interns that are going to be doing college credits or school credits within our office. So I just opened up the query manager again, meaning that I'm accepting queries from anybody. But it's not going to be me that's going to be combing through those queries. It's going to be the team that we have that's going to be coming through, and they're going to learn to train their eye to pick up on that one-page query that's going to captivate their attention, that's going to want to make them ask more. In turn, they're going to pass that along to me and say, Dennis, this is something I think you should look at. So if an agent says they want to request a meeting with you, these are the essential questions I would ask. Number 1, why me? What do you like about my manuscript? What stood out to you about my query letter, writer's bio, and or my career or background or platform? For me, as an agent, when I was sifting through my own query letters, I was looking for platforms. I was looking for a certain genre. And my biggest pet peeve as an agent is a lot of agents, it's if you misspell their name. For me, I find that kind of funny because that's something I would do. But my biggest pet peeve, I guess you would say, would have to do with the fact that if you send me something irrelevant to my genre, if I'm a Christian literary agent, so if you send me queries about, romance novels that use a lot of foul language, it's not my genre. And I'm like, why? What did you send this for? Did you research me on the web? Did you Google my name? Did you Google my submissions? Did you Google the books I've sold? So those are some questions I would ask. Are you interested in just this project of my writing career, or would you like future projects down the road? Okay, also going forward, why you? This is where you interview me. And no one's done this to me when I've taken on a client. Usually you have 1 hour in that call. Sometimes I schedule a half hour. It depends on what's needed. You should already know what is required or how the publishing industry works before you solicit an agent, because our job is to be the behind the scenes representation that's going to be negotiating all the legal contracts for you and also negotiating the best deals. I'm going to give you an example. My agent, Gina Panettiere, who is now my boss, she negotiated the deal for my book called Is He Nuts? Cedar Fort Publishing and Media only wanted to give me 10% of digital and audio sales. And she negotiated it and said industry standards are 25%. So that means that every dollar that the publisher makes, I earn 25% of that. And my agent gets 15% of that 25%. So every $100 in book sales that I sell, my agent makes $15, which is not a lot of money. I got to tell you, it's a lot of work for what we do, but it's worth it and it's worthwhile. So I would ask, how many years have you been an agent? I have been an agent since March of 2020. How did you become an agent, and what do you love about being an agent? I would laugh and say, well, that's an interesting story. My agent, I was trying to refer an acquisition editor at a publishing house who I knew was leaving, and I said, maybe you should become an agent part-time. And within 10 years, hopefully you'd be making enough money that you could quit your full-time job. And she said, yeah, I'll think about it. So I put her in contact with my agent, and that's when she said, well, Dennis, maybe you should become an agent. And I replied back in the group text, and I says, I don't have my master's in linguini, is what Siri says. It should have said linguistics. And this was in September of 2019, and then I prayerfully considered it, and I spoke to my boss, or my agent at the time, who's now my boss and still my agent. I said, I do need to, I will become an agent, but I'm going to do it effective March 1st of 2020. And then the world shut down. So that's the story, I would say. I would also ask, where are you based out of? I'm based in Connecticut, and the agency is also based in Connecticut, but it's in close proximity to Boston and New York City. But where they're based out of, I think, is irrelevant. You should already know that because you should have done your research on the agency. You should have Googled it. You should have looked to see what other agents are in there and what they represent. So that way you come off as knowledgeable. If you're going to have a phone meeting with myself, Google Dennis Schleicher and then literary agent and find out what you see. Do your homework and your due diligence, as I would say. But it doesn't matter where the agent is based out of, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of publishers, especially Christian publishers, are now based in Tennessee. So that's like the number one hub of the Christian publishing in the past 5 years. That has skyrocketed as far as publishing houses are concerned. And these are large publishing houses. So it doesn't matter where the agent is based out of. A lot of things are done through email, through texting, and phone calls. Would you be open to a video call or meeting in person, or would you prefer emails or phone calls? I would ask them what line of communication they prefer. And that's usually something I would clarify in the meeting myself. So, all these questions you don't have to ask, but I want you to use your judgment and do your due diligence and see what feels right to you when you do have that amazing meeting with an agent. So myself, in 2006, when I started writing, I started visualizing what it was going to be like to have an agent. And I visualized it every day. And then I got one. So that was, you never know. And a lot of agents are former acquisition editors from publishing houses. So my friend Paula, who works with us, she's a USA Today best-selling author. She lives in New Hampshire, But she started out as an acquisitions editor, and my boss, an agent, Gina Panettiere, was selling her manuscripts, and they developed a friendship. And from there, Gina said, "Why don't you become an agent?" when she was in between jobs. And that's exactly what she did. The fortunate thing, though, Paula had a husband that worked full time and was able to support her. So she did not need to work. So she was able to put in 10 years of blood, sweat, and tears to be able to now make a full time income as a literary agent. What books have you sold recently? This is an important question to ask. In the beginning, I was very upfront. I would say, "You're my first client," or "You're my second client," or "You're my third. So let's learn together." But they were more friends from church that I knew that I was representing, so it became easier for me, if that makes sense. Now I try to keep it where it's not friends, it's more or less business, because I don't want our friendship to ever be jeopardized by the fact that they didn't get the book deal that they wanted, because the publishing industry has changed a lot. But what books have you sold in my genre? That's another question I would ask. If I've never sold a children's book before and I'm trying to sell a children's book, I would be honest as that agent. But you need to feel, is that something you want? Because you want the marriage between you two, the friendship, to be copacetic. That person becomes quintessential in every part of your book negotiating deal. You want to be focusing on writing, and your agent is focusing on the day-to-day task of managing the contracts and the cover designs, or whether or not the cover was printed upside down or backwards or sometimes inside out. It's happened, believe me, it's happened. Are they going to negotiate a hardback deal or a softback deal? These are all important questions to ask. Now, to be honest, as an agent, we may not know. That's up to the publisher. But if you're a big-time celebrity, if you may, you can negotiate a hardback. If you're somebody who's never been published before and you haven't sold 1 million copies, there's no negotiating a hardback. It's only if, the only way you could get a hardback is if, and this is a hardback, is if it's a really hot genre, or if you have a really good agent. But in this case, I got a hardback by accident, and I can explain that in a later day. It was strictly by accident that I got a hardback. How many books have your agency sold? In that case, I could say, because Gina's been doing this for 25 years, I can say we have represented thousands of authors and titles. But for myself, I can only say I've represented a half a dozen, a little more, with books. Or clients. If you count multiple book sales with those clients, it's a little more. But you have to be honest and upfront. How many people work at your agency? Well, we have 5 agents, including myself. We have one executive assistant who runs that office like crazy. She's awesome, Nadia. And we have, we're going to be having 3 interns that are going to be coming in for the entire summer. So, and they will be there 3 days a week, and we're going to be utilizing them a lot. That's why I opened up my query manager again to receiving submissions. But again, it's not going to be myself reading them. It's going to be the interns, because we're training them to spot the needles in the haystacks, if you may. So how many people? Oh, will I be working with you or any other agents in your agency? This is an important question to ask. A lot of the big agencies will pawn you off to the interns or the assistants. That's not the case with our agency. First of all, it's illegal for us to pawn people off to interns, because they're not allowed to do any work that is going to make us money directly, i.e. negotiate book deals. It is myself, and when a contract comes in for a book, it would be myself that would receive it first, and then I would then submit it to all 5 agents. And what we would do is we would all review it, tear it apart, and mark it up in red and send it back. And this usually goes back a couple times, back and forth, back and forth. Could you share a list of your clients who you could speak to? This is something that, again, no one's asked me this. However, we list all of my clients on our website. So that is something that you could very easily find. So do your homework. And if you would have asked me this question in our 1-hour phone meeting, I would probably refer you to my author's page or my agent's page on the website. And I would say, oh, that's a great question you asked. Thank you for asking. You can find that information on our website. So that way I'm using my time to be valuable for you. And, but I would never give out phone numbers of other clients. That's like patient confidentiality, if you may. One question I was asked was, will you sign a non-disclosure agreement? And I was like, absolutely not. We're like attorneys, but for books. And you are under contract. We are under contract. We have liability insurance. We cannot disclose anything that is sent to us unless you are under contract or have signed a contract. Then we are allowed to submit it to publishing houses and acquisitions editors that would be in the position of purchasing this manuscript and presenting it to their team at Simon & Schuster, Bantam, Penguin House, you name it. And a fun question I think you could ask is, who is your favorite client? That's something I would ask my agent. Who is your favorite client, and why? Because I think that would tell you how you can better work with me. Because you don't want to jump on just because an agent said they want you to sign, to jump on that, because it may not be a good mix, and you want it to be a serendipitous relationship between the two of you. The submission process. So when do you anticipate going out on submissions with my book? I'm very honest that I have to put together comparison titles, comp titles. I have to put together, a reader's recommended age frame. There's a whole bunch of like market analysis that I have to put together. What I do require from you is a summary. And I would have probably already had seen that summary before I take a call with you. What time of year do you usually go out on submissions? So I'm really big on the spring and fall. Come summer, acquisition editors are in the Hamptons, Long Island, New York, or on vacation or working remotely. And in like the holidays around Christmas, the month of December, they shut down. Rightfully so, because they are bombarded with manuscripts to read. And a lot of them, when they go on vacation, they're reading a stack of manuscripts. And so they're deciding whether or not they can present that to the team. What kind of publishers would you submit to? Large, small, the big 5? And that's a good question to ask. I first search Publishers Marketplace for acquisition editors that are actively seeking manuscripts from agents only. And then from there, I would do a plethora. I'll do like a couple that are in a small print, mid-size, and then I'll do maybe 1 or 2 of the large prints, like Simon & Schuster, Penguin House, all the larger prints, publishing houses. Do you think this will be a tricky sell? And that is a good question to ask. Now, are these smart questions to ask? That's another thing you want to think about. And how long do you think the process will take? So usually it takes me about Once you sign the contract and send it back to the agency and Nadia gives me the go-ahead and I sign it as well, it takes me about 2 to 4 weeks to put together the all the sales material and put everything together and to do all the work to find the acquisition editors that I'm going to be submitting it to. And then from there, it takes, usually we hear back from an acquisitions editor that we submit it to within 2 to 4 weeks at the most, depending on whether or not they're traveling or they're speaking or they're doing workshops or trainings. So usually we know within a month. Now, another question that would be great to ask is, what happens if you can't sell my manuscript? And that has happened to me several times. I have repped authors that I have felt that I was really passionate about. And this one client of mine in California, she was referred by another friend of mine who I represent, and she wrote a children's book, and the publisher refused it. And I asked why, and they said, we don't have a market for this. And I was like, what? Like, what? But then after they explained it, it made sense. Yeah, it's too small of a niche market, even though it was a great genre. So you learn from this. Okay, now let's go into the fine print. Do you handle, or your agency or firm handle film or other submission rights? So that would be like sub rights. And yes, that's a good question to ask. We do. We have a team. We have Amy Collins. She handles the foreign sales. And we have somebody that specializes in audio. And we have somebody that, we would subcontract another agent if it went into movie rights, which you never know. It could happen. That would be a nice deal. Okay, what else to look for in the fine print? How involved will you get in the PR and marketing of my book? This is a huge question. Well, we're not publicists, and we will assist you by announcing your book on Publishers Marketplace, and podcasters and newscasters may reach out to us and ask if they could have an interview with you, and that's fine. But we're not publicists pounding the pavement. Those cost anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 a month to hire a publicist. However, the publisher will put about 2 days of publicity into your book, and on the day that it's launched. And after that, you get no more. So that's why it's imperative that you have a platform. Any specific clauses that I should be aware of? Another great question to ask. This is, our literary agent contract is about less than a page long. So you don't have to worry about the mundane stuff, if you may. We handle a lot of that. But we will make sure that we can negotiate the best deal for you. Okay, what does your future look like? These are some questions I would ask, and then I'm going to close it up. See if I have any comments from you. What happens if you can't sell my book? I've already answered that. What will be the next step after you sell my book? I would then say to you, I would ask that you start working on your next project. So that way we can get that out while the publisher is in print and in production for getting your manuscript out. When would you like to start discussing future projects? As soon as you complete one project, I would love to discuss future projects with you. That is a no-brainer. Are you open to me writing different genres in the future? Okay, I've been asked this before, and if it's not in my wheelhouse, I would probably recommend that you have another agent too. And you can have 2 literary agents. Just like you can have a literary agent and an agent that manages you and a social media agent and a publicist who's an agent. And there's all different types of agents that can handle this. And that would be, and what the last question I would ask is, what is the next step after I sign with you? And I would say, great question to ask. The next step would be that I start to put together all of the comp titles for your manuscript. I put together all of the sales statistics, which I make it presentable to acquisition editors that are actively searching for your genre, that are unsolicited by just the public. Because the agents have direct contact to publishers and publishing houses that not everybody has access to. A lot of publishing houses say closed to unsolicited manuscripts or submissions. This means that if you don't have a literary agent, they will not take or open or read your email. So I want to thank you for joining me today, and it means a lot. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. If you missed this in the beginning, please, it will be uploaded. You can go back and watch the beginning aspects. In conclusion, what we talked about is why me, why you, the revision process. I didn't go over the revision process, actually. This is something, so bear with me as I just realized, didn't even talk about this. What is the revision process? What kind of changes or revisions are needed in order to take my book out on submission to editors? This is a great question. A lot of times I'll read a manuscript and I'll say it needs editing, or it needs an editor, or it's got a good plot. And I would recommend you hiring an independent editor. But I would probably, right now, I'm not open to those clients, because your book has to be in tip-top shape for me to bring it on. Because it not only goes through my process, but our assistant and I pass it through a few other people within the agency that are insured and licensed and bonded, because I can't give it to just my friends to read. Your manuscript is sacred. It stays within the walls of the agency, if that makes sense. Will the revisions be small or major? Usually, if they're going to be major, the agent won't take you on. So you're going to want to, you're not going to really have to worry about that. Do you get involved with editorial processes? And, yes and no. I trust the editors. I'm not a professional editor, so I have complete faith in editing. What I will say is you need to trust the editors, because they know what sells and they know what works. So if they say something doesn't make sense, or they want to change something, or they want to delete 70 pages, listen to them, because they know what works. What does the process look like? Will you write me any additional letters, track changes, and so on? Sometimes I do. Sometimes I will track changes, but I would recommend, if you're interviewing multiple agents, create a spreadsheet and then list each question that you ask and their answers, because then you can compare them if you're interviewing two agents. And how hands-on are you during this process? That's the last question I would ask. So, thank you, and have an awesome day. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Take care, and bye for now.